perhaps a far more interesting team than the Dallas Cowboys, which is not something you would expect to say, right? Anyway, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the other side of the ball. Joining us to break it down, Bryan DeArdo. DeArdo, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
Good. Well, we're talking modern day football. I don't know about this. We don't have to dust off the VHSs. We're getting right into 2021. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, look, football's here. It's Thursday.
Yes.
It's the Hall of Fame game. The NFL, no preseason last year, so they'd come back in a big way with the Cowboys versus the Steelers. If you were picking, maybe Packers Steelers or Packers Cowboys would be bigger. This is pretty close to the biggest, in terms of just generically or generally interesting, I guess would be the word, not generically, generally interesting to the general populace. This might be the most intriguing game from a brand perspective, right?
Yeah, I think maybe if you went away from those two teams, you might go, well, take away the Steelers, Cowboys, Packers would be exciting just from those two brands and all the history and all that stuff. Now, if you're going local, man, I'll say this. I think there would be more action in the stands than on the field if you had Cleveland and Pittsburgh up there on Thursday night, because both teams are obviously really close to there. That area is really mixed in terms of their football loyalties. I would pay money to see that in the stands. There's probably a reason why they don't have that. But yeah, it's great. Cowboys, Steelers, the Super Bowl history. Fan bases are massive. I think combined they have 8 Hall of Fame representatives this weekend, which I'm sure was another reason why they wanted those two fan bases there, because they know they travel and they'll be there for the rest of the Hall of Fame festivities.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how they sort of tailor these games, is around those guys that are going in Canton. You want all the inductees from those two teams to be surrounded by their fans, and they should be. When you look at this game from a Steelers perspective, we talked about with Dubin, we know we're not going to see Dak. That was sort of I felt like it was almost like a late scratch. Like they kind of wanted to run Dak out there until the shoulder thing happened. There was never a chance that Mike Tomlin was going to waste Big Ben's arm on this game. I didn't think. I mean, I thought Ben was always going to be out. Don't you think that was going to be the case for Pittsburgh no matter what, right?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I don't think I could be wrong. I think the last time Ben played in a first preseason game was maybe in 15 he played in the second game. They were in the Hall of Fame game that year. Yeah. Then he played, I think, one play against Jacksonville, and it was a touchdown. They took him right out. They hit Martavis, and it was like that. Him, AB, Le'Veon, they were on the field together for like one play, and that was it. So, yeah, it was never going to be a thought that Ben was going to be in this game. Now, the big intrigue was who was going to start the game. There's been a lot of rumblings it was going to be Dwayne Haskins because of how well he's looked, but they still went with Mason, so he'll start the game. Dobbs will probably come in late first quarter, early second quarter, and he'll probably play through maybe the first drive of the third quarter, and then Dobbs will finish it out. So that was kind of the big intrigue, was who's going to get that initial crack at the game. It's going to be Mason, and then you'll see Haskins after that.
Well, I mean, look, the bottom line is Ben is old. I mean, and I know that the rumors of him being more diligent about his diet than Tom Brady are out there, losing all the weight out there. And that's fine. That's a wonderful preseason, off-season narrative.
Sure.
Ben missed almost an entire season 2 years ago because of an arm injury. It doesn't matter. I don't care if he's jamming 14 avocados down in his face every day. It's still, I'm more worried about the arm and all the passing attempts he had last year. Now, a lot of them were short, so that's maybe not as concerning. But I do think if you're a Steelers fan, you have to, you are intrigued by this backup quarterback battle. I mean, this is something to watch, right?
Well, it is, and I love the fact that Dobbs isn't shying away from it. He told the local media, I believe on Tuesday, that, I want to make this a battle for number 2. I mean, the big talk when they signed him, honestly, it was going to be between him and Dobbs for the third position. Mason hasn't had a good camp, and we just talked off air. You can only put so much stock into that. It's still early. You don't know. People forget that we didn't have preseason last year to compare this to. I would still give Mason that front runner position, but Dobbs has certainly put heat on him, and he's been very public about how he wants to.
You mean Dobbs? You mean Haskins?
I'm sorry, I meant Haskins.
Okay.
Yeah, Haskins has put the pressure on Mason, and he said, on Tuesday that he and the Steelers have had talks about potentially, if things go well, that he will have a chance to compete to be Ben's successor if and when Ben does step down, if this is Ben's last year. So there's a lot riding, for Mason. He's turned in what could be an otherwise boring game into a game of intrigue in terms of that quarterback position. The thing I'm going to look out for, though, for Haskins has always been the turnovers, where he gets into these games and he doesn't perform well. He had more interceptions in Washington than touchdowns. Mason, for all his faults, he takes care of the football. Mason, it makes usually the smart football decision. Neither quarterback is mobile, so no one's going to win that battle. Right. And I think both have good command of the huddle. So I would still give Mason the edge, even though Haskins has had a better training camp so far.
I should reveal something that I'm not thrilled about doing. I may have had a cocktail or two when I made this wager with somebody. It was and Debo will laugh at this. Debo hadn't even heard this yet either. I bet somebody that Dwayne Haskins would have, I think it's more starts than Carson Wentz beginning with this year, which in hindsight, terrible. It was before Wentz had been traded to the Colts, which was the worst possible landing spot. And before Haskins had been released. But you know what? Maybe so I'm an avid Haskins watcher as well. I mean, the guy had a pedigree coming out of college. You know, right. He only played 1 year, but had a monster year at Ohio State. Was a first round pick, highly rated recruit, highly rated draft prospect for a lot of people. And Pittsburgh picked him up for nothing. So yeah, I know that he was a knucklehead with Washington, but you know, this is the type of move that good franchises make, where if Haskins were to work out as the long-term successor for Ben, my goodness, I mean, it would be an unbelievable steal for Pittsburgh in that way.
It would. And one thing on Haskins too, and obviously Steeler fans know this, they really struggled to throw the ball deep last year. Some of that was Ben, but some of that was the drops or whatever it was. That's the thing about Haskins that he's impressed with training camp is his deep ball precision has been much better than Mason. And I actually went to the Haskins' last regular season game at Ohio State. I had end zone seats, which was pretty cool. It's like playing Madden, right? You get that end zone view.
Yeah.
The pockets he had to throw were unreal. I mean, OSU had one loss year. They won the Rose Bowl. He was throwing the Paris Campbell and guys that are now in the NFL. I think he went from that to Washington, where the line wasn't that great. He had Terry McLaurin from Ohio State, so he had that compatibility, but nothing really else. I think that's a huge culture shock for any young quarterback, let alone a guy like that who is drafted that high, doesn't have any chance to watch. I think now he has a much better understanding of what the NFL is. And Matt Canada's offense, I would expect some deep shots tomorrow to see if Mason or Haskins can translate the training camp precision and the deep throws into a regular season game against defensive backs he doesn't know. But I think you'll also see a lot of the quick slants, a lot of the stuff he did well in at Ohio State. That's the stuff that the Steelers want to do next year as well. And I think they'll ask him to do both on Thursday night.
Well, and that's sort of a nice segue into what I think is another important thing to watch. I don't know how many snaps we'll see from Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster, these starting wide receivers. I would expect, they're going to try and get snaps for some of the guys on the second, third string, et cetera. But I am curious, you mentioned Matt Canada. He's bounced around a bunch. This is, I believe, his first ever NFL coordinating gig. He was here in Raleigh. Actually, it was the coordinator for NC State for a while. I'm curious to see what his offense looks like and how, I didn't think Randy Fichtner was that great last year. I don't think I'm alone. Steelers fans will probably.
You're not. You are not alone there.
Yeah, Steelers.
There's a lot of people in that fan club, yes, or anti-fan club.
There's a lot of people on the Randy Fichtner sucks bandwagon. I'm just curious to see what Matt Canada's offense looks like and how much, what kind of idea we'll get from it. And is he going to be using a ton of pre-snap motion? Is he going to have guys lined up in different spots? Is he going to have multiple options with the running back position there? Jalen Samuels, I think he coached in Raleigh, I believe. I could be wrong about that. Will he use the passing game with the running backs more? So what are you sort of expecting from Matt Canada offense-wise, and what are you going to be looking for in that regard?
Well, the thing that I'm going to be looking forward, and I think this is one of the issues with Fichtner was, Ben and Fichtner were kind of more like drinking buddies or buddies as opposed to, because Fichtner, I think, was
he's a homeless man's Bruce Arians or something.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. You're right. I think he said last year he hadn't gone out since quarantine started in March or something. He had that beard and everything. But I think sometimes he deferred too much to Ben, or it was just like it was Ben's offense. And Villanueva said it when he went to Baltimore that, that was, I think, part of the issue with the Steelers' offensive line last year is how predictable they got. And Villanueva's like, it's already hard enough to block Myles Garrett. When Myles Garrett knows it's going to be a pass, it's impossible. It's game over. So I think what I'm looking forward to seeing is, or to see if it happens, is more of a determination to run the ball. And you're reading it a lot. The word that they're using in Pittsburgh for their offensive line is physical. They want to get back to being a physical team that's going to wear you down systematically with the running game. I think some of the things that Finkner had last year, Chase Claypool with the jet sweeps, they did that a lot last year. They did a lot of bubble screens. That stuff won't go away. But I think what they're really going to try to work on more is not getting away from the running game. I don't think it'll be 50-50, but it can't be 65-35 like it was last year. They've got to get it somewhere to a 55-45, something like that. So I think, and Najee Harris has already said, and Tomlin already said it, he's going to play in every preseason game. So you're going to see a lot of that. And I think one guy that I think Canada really likes is Anthony McFarland from Maryland. And I think he's going to be fighting to keep his spot because they've got a good running back battle with Samuels, who you mentioned, and then Kalen Ballage, who's come in and has done pretty well too. But they like McFarland a lot. So you'll see some more things on the outside, but I think you're going to see a much bigger commitment to the running game that you didn't see last year.
So you expect Najee Harris to play, and it's not outrageous to play. We talked about with the Cowboys. I mean, they got a bunch of defensive players who are rookies who need snaps and need experience. The one difference is with Najee Harris, if they're going to make him a true bell cow, and that's what you were led to believe they're going to do by Mike Tomlin's, but first of all, where they drafted him. Second of all, Mike Tomlin's comments about it, like this guy is going to be our workhorse. If that's the case, then you don't want to waste carries in the preseason. So how much do you expect to see of Najee Harris?
I don't think you might see him in maybe most 2 possessions a game, maybe something like that. Maybe there will be one game in the preseason where they'll probably have Ben and the starters play a half just to get some continuity. I think the last time they had a preseason in 2019, they did that against the Titans where they played a half. I think it was the 3rd preseason game they did that. So I would expect the Steelers to do something like that. But outside of that, maybe two possessions a game. I think what the Steelers want to see is how good is Najee in pass protection. He's done really well on their backs on backers drills. He hasn't won all of his one-on-ones, but Tomlin said he loves to fight. Not a lot of running backs don't have appetite for that. Like, let's be honest. And I love Jalen Samuels. He hates that matchup. So Najee likes it. So I think they want to see what he can do on 3rd down to see if he could be a 3rd down guy. His hands have been really impressive in camp, which he even said, he goes, guys, like I played receiver. That was something that was almost a knock against him during the draft, that he didn't have a huge accumulation of catches in college. That was something that they kind of held against him. So I think they want to see what he could do maybe in some 3rd down situations, and to see, is he going to be more of a north and south runner, or can we get him to the outside? So I think they kind of want to get a better idea of, and obviously, as you know, they want to build that chemistry with that offensive line. That is a rebuilt offensive line, which has had its good days in camp and it's had its ugly days. So I think they're going to try to build some chemistry. But I agree, Will. When I first heard that the plan is to have him in 4 preseason games, then you tack on the 17 regular season games before even we get to the regular season. That's 21 games for Najee Harris. I'm a little bit leery of that. That's why I don't think they're going to have him play a ton of snaps during the preseason, even though he'll be in all the games.
By the way, Matt Canada did coach Jalen Samuels at NC State. He was there for 2 years. And then he also coached Anthony McFarland at Maryland. That's kind of wild. You don't see that very often where the offensive coordinator for a football team was the offensive coordinator for two of his running backs. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Experience with the guys is good. It means he's bounced around several.
It's a bad thing for Benny Snell, who didn't have him as a coordinator, or Kalen Ballage, and that's not good news for them. But no, I mean, and Samuels, listen, I mean, Samuels had that one great game against New England in 2018 when he rushed for $140. Ever since then, the running game really hasn't been there. But he's a good receiver. I want to say in 2019, he was either first or second on the team in receptions. So the dude can catch the ball. Health has been kind of a thing, along with the fact that he's kind of a one-trick pony. But yeah, I still think he's got a good shot. He's a guy I'm looking forward to seeing in the preseason. And again, that's why I wouldn't waste that many snaps with Harris. He's going to be your starter. Let's see who's going to fill out the rest of your depth chart at running back during the preseason.
Yeah, sticking with the offense really quickly, because you referenced the offensive line. I do think that's a big deal. Both you and Ryan Wilson, who are Steelers fans, and I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, right? Like, sure. I mean, you guys have always rooted for the Steelers. You guys are objective journalists. You're good at your job, but you are Steelers fans. You're the only 2 people I've heard who are optimistic about this offensive line, and the approach has been like, it's better than last year, which almost feels like last year it really sucked. This year we are crossing our fingers and hoping it sucks less. Am I reading into that correctly. And I sort of wonder what you're hoping to glean from tonight's game as it relates to the offensive line.
Well, I want to see if we can get something out, or the Steelers can get something from the young guys that they have on that offensive line. I mean, I know that there's been with Turner, who they just signed. His camp's been kind of up and down, so they obviously had to sign him with DeCastro leaving right away. But I mean, Kendrick Green's going to start, which that's going to be, I think, for Steeler fans, an exciting thing to see. He's going to be wearing 53. So fans at home, Marquise Pouncey did not come out of retirement. Kendrick Green's wearing 53 now. So I'm getting that out right now. Don't mean to burst your bubble. But they really liked him. And I think a lot of Steeler fans were surprised in the second round when they went to Freiermuth, the tight end, who I also am looking forward to watching because he's had a really good camp as well and might challenge Ebron for some snaps. We will challenge Ebron there. That's not a debate. But I think Kendrick Green is someone that I'm looking forward to seeing. And also, Dan Moore, who's coming back and was, I think, last year the highest guy drafted that wasn't invited to the combine, a fourth-round guy last year. So, and they drafted a couple other guys in the offensive line. B.J. Finney was their best center/guard backup before they lost him to Seattle, and things just fell apart. He had a weight gain issue. They were able to re-sign him in the offseason. So I think that their starters, I'm okay with. Zach Banner was good last year before he obviously tore his ACL in week 1, and I think he'll be fine. But the guy that I really am looking forward to seeing is Kendrick Green and B.J. Finney, because they're going to need more depth behind their starters. That's really my big fear with the Steelers offensive line is their depth behind these guys. So I'm looking forward to seeing how many of those guys pan out during this preseason.
Okay, I dig it. Let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball. This unit doesn't – I feel pretty confident. It's hard to project year to year progression, regression, defensive performance. Like the Bills are a good example last year. Bills have a very good defense. They should be much better this year. They stunk last year. It just sort of happens, even with good defenses. I feel like when you look at the Steelers, there's no reason to expect a huge drop-off for any reason. They didn't invest a ton of high draft picks at all on the defensive side of the ball, but they have talent at every level. Anything you're looking forward to seeing in tonight's game defensively? Maybe a pass rusher emerging that would, I guess, or secondary players. That's sort of what I would be looking for, I think.
Right. Oh, Dotson was the guy last year, the lineman. Dan Moore's the rookie lineman they got this year. One thing I'm looking forward to seing the secondary, because they lost Steven Nelson, which everybody was surprised with that. And then they lost Mike Hilton, their nickel back, who was an undrafted guy in 2017 that really became a nice little spark plug for their secondary. Blitzed a lot. They lost him to Cincinnati. The thought was that Cam Sutton was going to fill that nickelback spot. He actually is going to replace Nelson. So now the question is, who's going to be that nickelback guy? And there's been James Pierre, who was undrafted this past year. He's the front runner right now. He had, I think, two pick-sixes in recent practices of 100 yards, roughly. So 107 and 97, I think, is what they were. So he stepped into that role pretty well. So I'm excited to see him. Shakur Brown, who I know Ryan Wilson had a third-round grade out of Michigan State. He wasn't even drafted. He was an undrafted pickup. So those are just two of the guys that are going to be competing for that nickelback spot. And Trey Norwood, another cornerback the Steelers drafted late in the draft, he'll be a guy with Joe Hayden inactive. Hayden's inactive, and Cam Hayward's inactive as well. So with those inactives, Isaiah Loudermilk, defensive end from Wisconsin, who I think some Steeler fans were not really happy about that selection, but the Steelers
how dare you draft a defensive player in the 5th round, right?
Well, right, exactly. But I mean, the Steelers, the motivation behind that selection was they had success with TJ Watt from Wisconsin in that same defensive scheme. They think Loudermilk is not necessarily a talent guy, but a guy that can play well in that scheme. Gotcha. So I think now with Hayward being out, Loudermilk's going to get a lot more reps. And now I think with Pierre versus Shakur Brown, I think that's going to be a big matchup. And Antoine Brooks is in there as well. So I'm actually interested in seeing how good that secondary is going to be, because all of a sudden now the AFC North has become a division with Burrow coming up and Baker and Lamar Jackson. You have to have a good secondary to have any kind of success in this league in general, not just the AFC North.
No, that's a good point. So in other words, you think we're probably going to see almost all the veteran players on the defensive side of the ball and probably the offensive side of the ball, minimal snaps at most in this first game, and then looking for, because it feels like I don't know that the Steelers need to get rookie production. They have enough veterans there. I mean, with Najee Harris and Freiermuth, you need them to play well. But it feels like other than those two guys, most of the rookies are going to be depth. But if you can get them out there in this game and they look sharp, you start to feel a little bit better about your chances, right?
Right. I will say this too, back on the offensive line. I think one guy that might need some reps is Chuck Scorafor, because he now is going to be the left tackle. This is actually kind of crazy. So Villanueva actually had the longest consecutive starting streak of any Steeler from 15 through last year. It was over 90 consecutive starts. Wow. He took over for Beachum in week 6 of that year, never left the lineup. So they've had the same left tackle. And think about all the numbers Ben had during that era, during that time, all the Pro Bowls and success he had with AB and all those guys.
Had the league in passing.
Yeah, that was his left tackle. So he's gone. And now Okorafor was the right tackle. Now he's moving over to left tackle. I actually wouldn't be surprised if he gets significant reps, because as everybody knows, I mean, that's protecting the quarterback's blind side. So that's actually a position where I think he's good. He's solid yet unspectacular. So I think that's a guy that is going to need considerable reps. But I agree with you. There won't be a ton of action from the starters. One guy I also wanted to throw in, Buddy Johnson. A&M last year, and I don't watch a ton of college football, but A&M's defense was really good last year in the SEC. And they had a bunch of guys get drafted, and the Steelers grabbed Buddy Johnson from that defense. With Vince Williams retiring, I think part of that was, I think he knew that the Steelers actually have some underrated depth at inside linebackers. So I think you're going to see quite a bit of Buddy Johnson, because they know what they've got from Robert Spillane. He filled in last year when Devin Bush got hurt. You might see a little bit of Devin Bush because he's going to be coming off that injury. You might see some Deontay Johnson because he had the drops last year. So you might see some of him, and you're going to see a lot of Ray McLeod and maybe even some James Washington. But you won't see much Juju. You won't see much Claypool. I mean, you shouldn't see much Minkah Fitzpatrick, because if that guy gets hurt, that defense is in big, big trouble. You might see a little bit of Stephon Tuitt, more than you would think, because his brother passed away. He came to camp out of shape, understandably. So nobody was hard on him because of that, but he's working his way into playing shape. So you actually might see him get some extensive time. But yeah, very little Big Ben, very little skill positions during the preseason.
All right, I dig it. This is this chat with you and Dubin's got me kind of amped up about this preseason game. As I told Dubin before the break, before you came on, I took the under. So we'll see how quickly I regret taking that. If and when these defensive players don't play.
What is the under set at? What is the under set at?
33.5. Pretty low.
I predicted I'm going like 23-17.
Oh no.
So I'm going way over. So I need to dust off my betting prowess here and get back at it. So
well, I mean, I'll let you know about the third or fourth quarter when I'm
yeah, let me know.
Yeah, if you got it right or wrong. All right, DeArdo. Thanks as always, man. Appreciate the time and look forward to football tonight, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, guys.
All right, buddy.